In the quiet countryside of northern Dallin village, life moved at a gentle, predictable rhythm. Fields of rice stretched like golden carpets under the sun, and the villagers, though modest in living, carried laughter in their eyes and stories in their hearts. But there was one place just beyond the southern rice banks where laughter died, and silence reigned, an ancient pond veiled in reeds, known in hushed tones as the Whispering Pond. Elias, a widower in his early 30s with a lean frame and haunted eyes, lived with his 6-year-old daughter Lila in a weathered stilt house not far from the cursed waters. His wife had died giving birth, and he had since kept his life simple, focused, and distant from the murmurings of local superstitions. But fate, it seemed, had plans that scoffed at simplicity. On a muggy afternoon, his neighbor, a scatterbrained boy named Cale, sprinted to Elias' house barefoot and breathless. "Eli, you need to come now," Cale shouted, his eyes wild. "What is it?" Elias asked, stepping out, wiping sweat from his brow. It's Lila. I saw her by the Whispering Pond. And she fell in." Elias froze. "What are you talking about?" "She's at her aunt's house in Arlene, remember? I sent her there 2 days ago." Cale shook his head violently. "I swear I saw her. Her yellow dress, the one with the flower patches. I was gathering firewood. She was just there. She looked like she was walking in a dream." Heart thundering, Elias didn't wait for another word. He bolted, Cale trailing behind, the air suddenly thick and oppressive as they neared the pond. The Whispering Pond was silent. Not a single cicada dared to hum. A strange odor, like rust and mildew, clung to the air. Reeds swayed gently, though there was no wind. Near the edge, an old man stood Luthen, known by the villagers as Old Bones for his thin frame and eerily long memory. He held a fishing pole, but the line dragged in the water lifelessly. "You saw her too, didn't you?" Elias demanded. Luthen didn't respond at first. Then he lifted his eyes, clouded but focused. "She called out. Just now. A whisper. Said she was cold. Said she wanted to come home." Elias stepped closer to the edge, his feet sinking slightly into the muddy soil. "That's impossible. I just spoke to my sister. Lila's still in Arlene." Luthen grunted. "Maybe her body is. But what if something else came back?" Cale swallowed hard, then pointed toward the pond. "There. Did you see that? A ripple. Faint. Unnatural. Then silence." Elias leaned closer. A low whisper rode the breeze, brushing past his ear like the breath of a ghost. "Daddy." He stumbled backward. That night, Elias drank too much rice wine, hoping to shake off the dread that clawed at his mind. Sleep came late, and when it did, it came heavy and filled with shadows. He dreamed of Lila standing in the rain, soaked, her hair plastered to her cheeks, her eyes pleading. "Come get me. I'm so cold." Elias woke with a scream, drenched in sweat. His lantern had gone out. The room was bathed in gloom. And then, he saw it. A small trail of wet footprints leading from the door to the foot of his bed. He stumbled to his feet, grabbing a stick from under the bed, heart hammering. No sound. No wind. Just the creak of the wood beneath him and the dim outline of those tiny, damp tracks. Suddenly, the air turned icy. From the shadows, a figure emerged, child-sized, blurry, water dripping from its limbs. Elias gasped as he lit the lantern again, but there was nothing there. The room was empty. But the footprints remained. The next morning, he rushed to the village elder, Master Orion, an exorcist retired in peace. "I need your help," Elias said, pale as bone. "Has the pond called to you?" Orion asked, his tone grave. Elias hesitated. I think it's taken my daughter." Orion closed his eyes and nodded slowly. "It begins again." They weren't the only ones who had seen something strange. Rumors spread quickly, a girl in yellow walking under the moon, dragging a doll. A voice calling out from wells. A black shadow gliding along the rice fields. But when the body of a child dressed in yellow was found floating at the edge of the whispering pond that evening, the village descended into fear. It was Lila. But she had never left for Arlene. Her aunt confirmed, the child never arrived. Elias collapsed, the world crashing around him. Who or what had he spoken to on the road 2 days ago? That night, the elders convened in secret. They lit incense and unrolled old scrolls. They spoke of an ancient sin buried beneath the pond, of rituals long forgotten, of a cursed family that once used the waters to trap wandering souls. Orion confirmed the worst. The pond has awakened. And it's hungry. The entire village mourned the death of little Lila. But beneath the mourning, fear festered like an open wound. No one understood how a child meant to be far away could appear at the pond. And fewer still dared to say aloud what some had begun to suspect, that it was not Lila who died, but something wearing her skin. Master Orion returned with Elias to his home, incense trailing behind him like ghostly tendrils. He set up a simple altar, lighting 3 red candles and murmuring a chant in a tongue Elias had never heard. "This house," Orion said grimly, "has been marked." Elias stared at him. "By what?" "By a curse older than this village," Orion replied. "Something was awakened when the child died. Or perhaps, even before that." That night, Elias found no peace. He laid in bed, but his mind replayed Lila's final whisper, "Come get me." As the clock ticked past midnight, the house began to creak, not from wind, not from age, but from footsteps. Tiny, wet footsteps. Elias sat up, eyes darting around. Shadows crawled across the walls, and the temperature plummeted. Then a knock, soft, slow, deliberate, came from the front door. He grabbed the lantern and crept toward it. His hands trembled as he unlatched the lock. The door swung open. But no one was there. Only a single yellow flower, soaked and pressed into the mud. He picked it up, heart racing. It was the same flower Lila had picked the week before. But how could it have survived? Suddenly, from the trees beyond his house, a cry echoed, high-pitched, desperate. "Daddy! Help! It's pulling me down." Elias ran out with nothing but his lantern and the flower in hand. He stumbled through the rice paddies, thorns ripping at his legs, mud soaking his feet. And then, he saw it, the pond, glimmering with an unnatural light. But it was no longer still. The water churned like boiling oil, and from its center, something began to rise. Not a creature. Not a corpse. A structure. It looked like a shrine, blackened and covered in moss, half submerged in the middle of the pond. Symbols etched into its stone walls glowed faintly red as if awakened by blood. Elias dropped to his knees. What is this place? Behind him, someone placed a hand on his shoulder. He turned and screamed. It was Lila. Her eyes were pitch black. And her voice was not her own. "The gate is opening, Father. Will you help me? Bring them through." In the morning, Orion found Elias passed out at the edge of the pond, clutching the yellow flower. When Elias awoke, he was trembling and incoherent. But after Orion calmed him with herbal smoke and chants, Elias began to speak. She was there. My daughter. She touched me. But it wasn't her face, it was like wax. Her voice echoed with others inside it. Orion stood silent, brow furrowed. Then, he took Elias to the village temple. There, hidden beneath a loose stone, he revealed a dusty, leather-bound book. Inside were drawings crude but terrifying of the Whispering Pond in ancient times. Long ago, Orion said, this pond was not a pond. It was a prison. A well that led to the lower vein, a rift between our world and what lies beneath. What lies beneath? Elias asked. Hungry spirits. Bound souls. What some used to call the children of the hollow deep. They were sealed by monks centuries ago. But the seal was made with blood, the blood of innocence. Elias paled. You mean, they used children? Orion nodded grimly. Yes. And every few generations, the pond takes back what it was once denied. They were interrupted by Kale bursting into the temple, pale and wide-eyed. "Eli, the pond, it's spreading." Orion and Elias followed him back to the pond. And indeed the banks had grown. Trees that once stood tall beside the pond were now half sunken. The water line had extended by several meters overnight. And at the center, the black shrine stood fully emerged. A doorway had opened. Villagers began to whisper of strange dreams, dreams of drowning, of children weeping, of a woman cloaked in moss calling their names from beneath the water. One farmer, old Tom, claimed his son who had died a decade ago appeared at his window and begged him to follow the voices. The next morning, Tom was gone. Only his boots remained sitting neatly at the pond's edge. That night, the council of elders met under secrecy, joined by Orion, Elias, and 3 villagers who claimed to have seen things walking by the river at dusk. "The shrine must be sealed again," Orion insisted. "But we need the original rites. We need the blood of the marked one." "Who is that?" Elias asked. Orion looked at him with regret. "You." The words struck Elias like a blade. "You are the marked one." Orion's voice echoed in the candle-lit hall of the temple. The other elders sat in stunned silence, their faces pale under the golden glow of ancient lanterns. Elias rose to his feet. "Why me?" "You were born under a red moon," Orion said quietly. "And more than that, your bloodline traces back to the original guardians. Your ancestors once stood watch over the Whispering Gate, sworn to keep it sealed at all costs." "My family were farmers." "That's all," Elias replied, anger rising in his chest. "No," said Elder Marone, the oldest among them. "Your family were keepers of balance. But generations ago, they forsook their duty and fled, trying to live normal lives. But you can't run from blood, Elias. And now, the pond calls for a debt unpaid." Elias sat down slowly. "So what do you want me to do?" Orion opened the leather-bound tome again, flipping to a page stained with reddish ink. "We must complete the binding ritual, one that seals the gate for another 100 years. But it requires the blood of the marked, willingly given at the altar, under moonlight." Elias clenched his fists. "If it will stop this, if it will give Lila peace, I'll do it." But even as he said it, something inside him stirred uneasily. The following night, preparations began. The village square was transformed into a circle of salt and sage, with protective runes drawn in white chalk across the ground. Orion instructed the villagers to remain in their homes. No one was to speak, sing, or step outside after dusk. Elias fasted for the day and was kept in prayer and silence. As twilight painted the sky in violet and ember, he was led to the altar of flat stone near the pond, carved with runes so old they pulsed faintly on their own. The moon hung above them like a blind white eye. Elias took the dagger. The blade was old, forged with silver, obsidian, and bone. Its edge gleamed under the moonlight. He raised it, ready to slice across his palm. Then, a sound. Laughter. Children's laughter, high, broken, echoing like it came from the bottom of a well. Everyone froze. Orion looked around. Hold the circle. Stay within. Suddenly, the ground began to shake. The pond's surface bubbled violently. From the shrine's doorway, something emerged. It was tall, impossibly thin, with elongated limbs wrapped in rotting black robes. No face, only a mask of wood with carved tears and a smile too wide to be human. The pale keeper had awakened. Villagers screamed as the creature glided over the water without rippling it. It reached the salt circle and stopped. Its hand long, with 7 fingers pointed at Elias. "You carry the dead," it said in a voice like cracking ice. "But you are not enough." Orion stepped forward. "He is the marked one. The ritual is prepared." The creature laughed a dry, withered sound. "The gate has grown greedy. One drop of blood will not suffice. You must offer more. Much more." The wind howled. The trees groaned. And then, from the houses behind them, doors began to open. Children, glassy-eyed, barefoot, and wet, stepped out into the night. One by one. Dozens. Some had died years ago. Some had never existed. Elias looked around, breath caught in his throat. They walked toward the shrine. The pale keeper gestured. They come. They remember. Their souls were never laid to rest. Then Elias saw her. Lila. Standing among them. Soaked. Silent. Her eyes locked with his. "Daddy," she said. He stumbled forward, the dagger dropping from his hand. "Lila. I'm here. I'm..." Suddenly, Orion grabbed him, pulling him back into the circle. "She's not your daughter anymore. That thing wears her face." Elias broke down. The circle began to falter. Candles blew out. The runes faded. And then, a scream. One of the villagers on the edge was pulled under the earth, swallowed whole by shadow. The keeper stepped forward. 3 days, it hissed. "Bring me what was taken. Return the child's soul, or the gate shall open, and none of you will remain." And with that, it vanished into the shrine, the children following, fading like smoke in wind. Back at Orion's temple, Elias slammed his fist on the table. "What does it mean? Return the child's soul. Lila's dead." Orion looked pale. Not her body. Her spirit. It was stolen. Claimed by something else. Elder Marone coughed. There's a legend. One of the Hollow Deep's oldest specters, a collector of souls. She is called the Weeping Matron. She keeps the souls of drowned children to build her own, twisted family. Elias's hands shook. So how do we find her? There is one place, Orion whispered. But it is forbidden. A place even I swore never to return. Where? Elias demanded. Orion stared into the candlelight. The veiled path. Beneath the catacombs of Dallin Church. A tunnel that leads through the roots of the pond. Into the matron's domain. Elias stood. Then I'll go. Orion grabbed his arm. You don't understand. That path warps the mind. You'll see things you wish you could forget. Elias pulled free. She has my daughter. And I will not leave her behind. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, though no clouds had gathered. The pond had awakened. And time was running out. The night was heavy. Clouds gathered like silent watchers above the village of Dallin, their bellies swollen with storms that would never break. The pond no longer whispered, it growled, an ancient warning thrumming beneath the ground. But Elias had no time to heed it. He was going to descend. The catacombs beneath the ruined Dallin church were sealed with chains blackened by age. Orion had warned him that this path was a place of memory and madness, a place where time folded, where the dead spoke through stone, and the living sometimes didn't return whole. But Elias had already crossed the line between sanity and sorrow. He wanted his daughter back. With a rusted crowbar and bloodied hands, he pried open the final gate. The smell that poured from below was not rot, it was grief, as if all the sadness of 1,000 lifetimes had been bottled and buried here. A single stairway wound down into the dark. And so he entered the veiled path. The descent was slow. Walls wept with moisture. The air thickened, until it felt like breathing through cotton soaked in brine. Strange carvings adorned the walls, not made by chisels, but by fingernails, by people scratching warnings in their final moments. They took my son. Don't speak to the echoes. Your name is not yours here. The deeper Elias went, the more he saw flickers of movement just beyond the lantern's reach. Shapes. Faces in the stone. Whispered lullabies that twisted into sobs. Then silence. He had reached the threshold. A wide, circular chamber opened before him, supported by pillars that looked like twisted vertebrae. In its center, a pool of black water, perfectly still, perfectly round. No ripples. No reflection. Just his daughter's voice. Daddy. Elias ran toward it, slipping on moss-covered stone, nearly dropping the lantern. But the voice came not from above, or behind it came from within. He peered into the water. At first, he saw only black. Then, a face. Pale. Hollow-eyed. Her mouth moved, but no sound emerged. Lila. He whispered. The water trembled. From behind him, a voice spoke sweet, maternal, wrong. She belongs to me now. He turned. Standing by the pillar was a woman. Or what used to be a woman. Her dress, soaked and rotted, clung to her skeletal frame. Her eyes were pinpricks of drowning stars. Her smile was wet and too wide. The weeping matron. I gave them what their parents never could, she said softly. Love. Shelter. Eternity. You stole her, Elias growled. She was cold. Afraid. I kept her safe. Elias raised the blade Orion had blessed with salt and iron. Then give her back. The matron smiled wider. You think this is that simple? She raised a hand, and the black pool shuddered. From it, figures emerged childlike, but twisted. Arms too long. Eyes gouged out. Mouth sewn shut. The fostered, her creations. You want her soul, she said, voice like cracking porcelain. Then prove you deserve it. The matron vanished. The fostered moved. Elias fought through the chamber with fire and fury. The fostered were not alive, but neither were they dead. Each shriek sent memories into his mind that weren't his own. He saw visions of children crying out for their mothers, of ropes binding tiny limbs, of black water swallowing laughter. He fell to his knees. Lila. He screamed. And from the pool, light bloomed. A figure rose, not twisted, not cursed but radiant. Lila. Daddy. I'm still here. But she was bound. Chains of white bone held her, anchoring her to the depths. I want to go home. Elias crawled toward the edge, the blessed blade still in hand. The matron reappeared beside him. She will forget you in time. They all do. You can leave now. The gate will remain closed. You'll forget. You'll heal. Elias looked up. What happens if I don't leave? She leaned close. Then you must take her place. Elias said nothing. He kissed the blade, stood tall, and plunged it into his palm. His blood glowing silver from the blessing splashed into the black pool. The water screamed. Chains shattered. Lila rose, her face clearing, her eyes regaining their light. The matron shrieked, voice twisting into dozens of angry children. No. She is mine. But Elias had made his choice. Take me, he whispered. Let her go. The foster turned. They surrounded him. Clawed hands reached. But Lila screamed, no. A burst of light exploded from her. The matron reeled back, her form splintering, burning. The fostered dropped to their knees. One by one, they whispered, thank you. Then silence. When Elias opened his eyes again, he was back in the temple. Lila lay beside him, asleep but breathing. Safe. Orion and the elders stood over him, relief mixed with awe. You did it, Orion said. You brought her back. But Elias could only whisper one thing, again and again. I saw them. The others. They're still down there. The temple bells rang at dawn. But they rang wrong. Not from the tower, but from somewhere deeper beneath the floorboards, inside the bones of the stone. The sound was hollow, distorted, like someone ringing a bell underwater. Lila was awake now. Alive, breathing, and safe at least on the surface. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. A shimmer. A shadow. A silence. Elias sat beside her in the temple courtyard, the rising sun painting her skin gold. You don't remember anything? He asked. She shook her head slowly. Only dreams. Cold ones. Orion joined them, holding the leather tome, now cinched and missing pages. The shrine in the pond, he began, it hasn't disappeared. In fact, he paused. It's changed. When they returned to the Whispering Pond, a crowd had already gathered. And everyone could see it, the shrine had grown. The black spires that once barely poked above the water now reached for the sky. Symbols had changed to no longer the old guardian runes, but something alien. Circles within circles, eyes without pupils, mouths without lips. One child whispered, "It's watching us." And he was right. The shrine was alive now. Breathing. The water pulsed around it like veins. Elias gritted his teeth. I sealed the gate. You sealed a gate, Orion said quietly. But there are others. Elder Marone arrived in a panic, dragging a mangled piece of cloth. We found this at the edge of the river. It belonged to my grandson. Everyone stared. The cloth was burned not by fire, but by acid. As if something had leaked through from the other side. Elias took a deep breath. What did I bring back with me? That night, Elias dreamt again. But this time, it was not Lila calling him. It was a voice deeper, older. It came from beneath the pond, from the bones of the world. A language with no words, just sound and terror. When he woke, his hands were bleeding. Strange symbols were carved into his palms. And he had no memory of doing it. Orion, after inspecting the marks, turned pale. These are the sigils of Thalzur, the sleeper below. A primordial god, sealed long before humanity's time. One who devours time and memory. It feeds on forgotten pain. Elias shook his head. No. I didn't bring a god back. Orion stared at him, eyes wide. You didn't. But the matron was its servant. And now that she's dead. He didn't need to finish. Something else had taken her place. The village began to decay, not physically, but spiritually. Children stopped dreaming. Old men forgot their own names. Books turned blank. Names faded from graves. Couples couldn't remember how they met. Memory itself was rotting. Elias realized the truth. The veil he pierced to rescue Lila had torn, and something had slipped through. A being that eats the past, unravels identity, and spreads like mold through time. He returned to the pond. Alone. There, standing at the edge, he met someone unexpected. Himself. But older. Worn. Eyes hollow. The older Elias smiled grimly. You think you saved her? Elias backed away. What is this? A warning, the figure said. You came back with blood, but no flame. The gate opened just a sliver and something ancient smelled your soul. The reflection shimmered, and suddenly Elias was alone again. Then, from the pond, a voice whispered. One becomes two. The gate becomes a door. And soon, a flood. The elders convened one last time. Their plan was clear, to destroy the shrine. To burn it. Collapse it. Salt the water and pray to what God still listened. But as they marched to the pond with torches and chants, they found the water had vanished. The pond had dried overnight. In its place a chasm. A black abyss that breathed. And from within, a single stairwell. Descending. Elias stepped forward. I'll go, he said. You just came back from hell, Orion warned. Elias nodded. And I think I brought it with me. The villagers stood in stunned silence. Where once the whispering pond had rippled like black silk, now there was only a yawning chasm, a gaping hole in the earth lined with obsidian roots, like claws reaching up from the underworld. It wasn't a pond anymore. It was a wound. A wound bleeding memory, time, and soul. Elias peered over the edge. A single staircase spiraled down into darkness. But it wasn't stone, it was bone. Massive vertebrae stacked one after another, slick with ancient slime and whispering with the voices of those who had drowned. Orion placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to go alone." Elias shook his head. "I do. This thing, it marked me. I brought it back. I finish it?" He lit a lantern. The flame inside was blue, not from oil, but from a powder mixed by Orion himself, moon ash, said to reveal the truth behind lies, to burn illusions. Then, with a single breath, Elias stepped onto the staircase of bone, and began the descent into the hollow below. As he moved deeper, the air grew thick not with dust, but with memories. They clung to him like spiderwebs. He saw flickers of his childhood, his mother's face, long forgotten. Then flashes of his wife. Her final breath. Her eyes filled with both sorrow and something darker, something he hadn't noticed before. "Why didn't you see?" a voice whispered from the wall. Elias gritted his teeth and moved on. Further down, he found doors, massive stone slabs on either side of the stairway, each etched with names. Names of the dead. Names of the forgotten. And when he looked closer, his name was among them. Carved into the stone, flickering with eerie light. Elias Gale offered but unredeemed. Suddenly, the flame in his lantern flickered. Wind rose, but not from below. From behind. He turned. And there she was. His wife. But her skin was pale, her mouth sewn shut, her stomach sliced open, revealing the glimmer of a child's bone hand within. She pointed at him. "You didn't save me." Elias dropped to his knees. "I didn't know you were gone." But the vision laughed a wet, gurgling laugh. Then vanished. He stood again, heart pounding. This wasn't just a descent into the earth. It was a descent into judgment. Finally, after what felt like hours or lifetimes, Elias reached the hollow gate. A massive circular structure of roots, bone, and glyphs pulsing red. It looked alive. It was alive. And before it stood a figure. Not the matron. Not a monster. But himself. Not older. Not younger. Just empty. "I am what you become," the doppelganger said. "I am the man who stays here. Who seals the gate. Forever." Elias approached. "Then let's end this." But the figure shook its head. "You can't seal it. Not unless you feed it." "Feed what?" "The god beneath names. The one who lived here long before your pond, your village, your people. The one who waits to be remembered." Elias clenched his fists. "What does it want?" The figure stepped aside. Behind him, the gate cracked open. And Elias saw it? The true form of the curse. A writhing mass of memory and bone, with a face that changed constantly, flickering between his wife, his daughter, his parents, the villagers. It had no form of its own, only what was lost. And it whispered, "Give me what you cherish. Give me what you remember. Give me yourself." Orion's words echoed in his head, "These things feed on pain that is remembered. On names. On truths." So Elias understood. The only way to seal it, was to erase himself. To give the hollow his name, his face, his story, everything that tethered him to existence. He stepped forward. The doppelganger vanished. The gate widened, tendrils stretching to touch him, test him. Elias dropped to his knees. He took the last vial from his pocket, Lila's hair, kept from the day she was born. He kissed it. "I love you," he said aloud. "But you won't remember me." And then, without hesitation, he placed the vial into the center of the gate. And he spoke his own name for the last time. The moment the syllables left his lips, the gate screamed. The entire hollow trembled. The tendrils recoiled. And in a flash of blue fire, the kind only moon ash could make, the gate collapsed. The bones cracked. The runes split. And the god of forgotten names was forced back into sleep. Elias awoke at the edge of the dried pond. Alone. The chasm was gone. The shrine was rubble. And no one around him knew who he was. He walked through the village. People nodded politely, unaware. Even Lila. She skipped past him, holding Orion's hand. "Who's that man?" she asked. Orion hesitated, then smiled. "Just someone who passed through." As the sun rose, Elias turned away. His name was gone. But the village was saved. And the hollow. Sleeping. For now. The morning fog still clung to the edges of Dallin village like a pale veil when a stranger arrived. His clothes were travel-worn, patched but clean, his eyes sharp, scanning the village as if weighing every stone and whisper. He carried a leather satchel, old but well kept, with strange symbols embossed on its flap, symbols that made the villagers avert their eyes uneasily. Elias, who had wandered the village for days, unseen and forgotten, watched from the shadows. The village no longer remembered him, but he remembered everything. The stranger walked directly to the small shrine at the village entrance, where elders and villagers gathered in quiet suspicion. Orion stepped forward, his voice calm but wary. "Who do you seek?" The stranger's gaze flicked to the man and then the village. "I am called Theron. I seek the hollow gate." A hush fell. "The hollow gate." Elder Marone echoed. "That place has been sealed for centuries. Why bring it up now?" Theron smiled thinly. Because the gate is never truly closed. I hold the key to what lies beneath. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a scroll, ancient and fragile. The parchment was cracked with age, ink faded but still legible in the strange script of the old guardians. Orion took the scroll with trembling hands. This is the forgotten scroll. It was lost ages ago. It contains rituals to bind and to awaken. Theron nodded gravely. And the price to pay? Later, away from the eyes of the villagers, Theron confided in Elias. You are marked, he said, eyes studying Elias' face like a map of pain and sorrow. Elias narrowed his eyes. I am no one here. True, Theron admitted, but your bloodline holds the power to control what sleeps beneath the pond. Your sacrifice in the hollow, it was only the beginning. Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine. What do you want from me? To restore balance. To prevent what the matron failed to stop. Elias shook his head. The gate is sealed. I gave everything to close it. Theron's eyes darkened. You closed the gate, but you opened a door. Others are coming. The hollow remembers. And the curse spreads. Days passed, and strange occurrences multiplied. Children began to vanish from their beds, only to reappear days later, silent and pale, their eyes reflecting deep pools of sorrow. The villagers whispered of the hollow's reach, a creeping shadow that burrowed into their homes and dreams. Elias, desperate to find answers, journeyed to the pond's edge at night. There, the water had returned black as obsidian, cold as death. Theron appeared beside him. You must enter again, Theron said. But this time, with the scroll. Elias hesitated. Why me? Why not you? Because only the marked can walk the veiled path without losing themselves. Elias clenched his fists. I have nothing left to lose. Theron handed him the scroll, murmuring an incantation that set the parchment ablaze with pale blue fire. Be careful. The hollow tests not just your strength, but your memories, your fears, and your soul. As Elias prepared to descend once more, he was haunted by visions. Memories of his wife smiling coldly, a figure watching from the shadows, Lila's face splitting into countless reflections, each one whispering secrets he dared not hear. He felt the weight of his bloodline pressing down on him, a legacy of pain, of forgotten oaths, and eternal vigilance. At the pond, Elias touched the water, now glowing faintly. The entrance to the veiled path opened slowly, inviting him back into the depths. Taking a deep breath, Elias stepped forward. Below, the veiled path twisted and churned like a living nightmare. The bones creaked and whispered ancient songs. Shadows moved, forming into faces, friends and foes long dead. But this time, Elias held the scroll, and with it, a flicker of hope. Yet, the deeper he went, the more the hollow clawed at his memories, distorting them, reshaping them. He saw visions of a man, the original guardian, who made a terrible bargain to imprison the hollow, sacrificing his own family to keep the village safe. Elias felt a kinship, and a warning. The curse was not just on the village, it was on the bloodline. He heard a voice, distant but clear. Only blood can seal blood. Back on the surface, the villagers prepared for what might come. Orion gathered the elders. "We must be ready," he said. "The marked one descends again. We pray he returns whole." Deep beneath Dallin, the veiled path twisted like a serpent devouring its own tail. Elias held tightly to the forgotten scroll, its blue flame casting flickering shadows on the ancient bone walls. Every step forward felt like a step deeper into his own past and into a nightmare he was only beginning to understand. The air grew colder, heavier, charged with an electric tension that made his skin prickle. Suddenly, the passage opened into a vast cavernous chamber, the heart of the hollow. It was unlike anything Elias had imagined. The chamber was a cathedral of bones, with arches made from enormous ribs and walls carved with faces, some crying, some screaming, others blank and watching. In the center, a pool of obsidian water shimmered with unnatural light. From the shadows, a figure emerged. It was Theron, but different. His eyes glowed faintly, his smile more knowing, and there was an aura of something ancient, almost divine. "You have come far, Elias," Theron said, voice echoing around the chamber. "But now, you must face the echoes." Before Elias could ask, the faces on the walls began to move, stepping out one by one into the chamber. They were the echoes, the souls trapped between worlds, twisted by the hollow's hunger. Among them, Elias recognized familiar faces, villagers lost long ago, his ancestors, even shadows of his own memories. They drifted closer, their eyes pleading. Elias's heart pounded. "What do you want from me?" Theron's eyes pierced into his. "They seek release, but to free them, you must make a sacrifice greater than blood." The echoes reached for Elias, whispering secrets of the past, long-buried sins, and betrayals. Their voices overlapped, a cacophony of guilt and despair. Suddenly, a chilling realization hit Elias: the hollow was not just a prison, but a mirror reflecting the darkest parts of those who entered. As the echoes closed in, Elias felt his memories warp, faces twisted into grotesque parodies, moments of joy turned into scenes of loss. He was drowning in the weight of his own history. But then, from the depths of the pool, a soft light appeared. Lila's voice called out, clear and pure, breaking through the madness. "Father, remember who you are." Summoning all his will, Elias grasped the scroll and began to chant the ancient incantations inscribed upon it. The blue flame blazed, illuminating the chamber with a fierce glow. The echoes screamed, clutching their heads as the words unraveled the web of despair holding them captive. One by one, they dissolved into beams of light, ascending toward a distant realm of peace. Elias felt the crushing weight lift, replaced by a profound calm. Theron smiled, eyes now filled with respect. You have passed the trial of echoes. But before Elias could rest, a new shadow emerged, darker, more immense. The Hollow's true heart, a colossal, amorphous entity with countless eyes and mouths, pulsating with hunger and rage. You sealed the gate, but I am eternal, it boomed. Your sacrifice is meaningless. Elias raised the scroll, determination blazing in his eyes. Then I will bind you, in blood and memory. The chamber shook as the battle between man and ancient horror began, a struggle for the soul of Dallin and all who dwelled within. The chamber trembled beneath the crushing weight of the Hollow's true form. Its countless eyes glared at Elias, mouths gaping open with silent screams, stretching tendrils that twisted reality itself. The very air seemed to warp, thickening with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. Elias gripped the forgotten scroll tighter. The blue flame within flickered, wavering against the oppressive darkness. You think your mortal will can bind me? The entity's voice was 1,000 echoes, impossible to localize, reverberating from every corner of the cavern. Elias steeled himself, feeling the burden of his bloodline and sacrifices. I don't think. I know. With a sudden motion, he raised the scroll and began chanting in the ancient tongue words woven from despair and hope, binding and banishment. The glyphs along the parchment glowed brighter, illuminating the cavern in an ethereal light. The Hollow recoiled, shrieking in a soundless roar that rattled Elias's bones. From the depths, spectral shapes surged. The echoes Elias had freed now returned, but this time to aid him. They swirled around his feet, coalescing into chains of shimmering light. Elias's voice grew stronger, the ritual gaining power, weaving a prison of spirit and memory around the abomination. But the creature was cunning. With a flick of a tendril, it shattered the chains, sending Elias sprawling against the bone wall. Pain surged through him, visions flooding his mind, his wife's betrayal, Lila's terrified cries, the endless cycle of sacrifice and loss. He gasped for breath. Theron appeared at his side, casting protective wards with whispered incantations, shielding Elias from the mental onslaught. You're stronger than most, Theron said, voice tense. But this creature feeds on regret. Fight it, or it will consume you. Summoning every ounce of will, Elias rose. He stared deep into the hollow abyss where the entity's core pulsed like a black star. Closing his eyes, Elias touched the Lila's hair vial around his neck. Lila, he whispered, give me your strength. A radiant warmth spread through his body, and the blue flame of the scroll burst into a brilliant blaze. With renewed vigor, Elias chanted louder, the words resonating through the chamber, binding the Hollow's limbs, squeezing it tighter with chains forged from the purest memories he held dear. The entity howled in rage and despair, thrashing wildly, fracturing the cavern walls. Rocks rained down, bones shattered, and the ground split beneath their feet. Elias felt the world tilting, time folding upon itself. Suddenly, From the shadows, a figure stepped forth. A woman. Draped in robes of midnight and stars, her eyes burning with an inner light. The matron's death was but the beginning, she said softly. Theron's face paled. The seeress. The seeress extended a hand. From her palm flowed a river of light memories and futures intertwined. This is the price of your victory. The hollow will not be bound forever. Time is a circle, and the curse will rise again. Elias stepped forward, defiance blazing. Then we will be ready. The seeress nodded and vanished, leaving behind a whisper. Remember, Elias Gale, the bloodline binds not just the gate, but the fate of all who remember. Forget, and all is lost. Outside the cavern, the village was waking. Children played unaware of the battle beneath their feet. But Elias knew. The war was far from over. He turned to Theron. What now? Theron's eyes gleamed. Now, we prepare. For the hollow's shadow has touched this world. And soon, it will reach beyond the pond. Elias looked toward the horizon, where the sun broke through dark clouds. His journey was just beginning. The village of Dallin awoke to an uneasy silence. The sun cast long shadows over fields that seemed less golden and more brittle, as if the very soul of the land was wilting under an unseen weight. The pond, once dried and sealed, now shimmered faintly in the early light, its waters reflecting a sky that never quite cleared. Elias sat alone in the temple courtyard, his thoughts a storm of uncertainty and dread. Though he had descended into the hollow and faced the darkness, the war was far from over. Theron approached, carrying a worn leather satchel and a face etched with worry. The seeress warning was true, he said quietly. The hollow's curse is spreading. Elias looked up. How? I sealed the gate. The curse should have ended. Theron shook his head. Not ended. Transformed. The hollow does not die, it mutates. The bloodline's sacrifice was only a delay. From the satchel, Theron pulled out a fragile map, inked in symbols older than the village itself. This is the web of shadows, he explained. A network of ley lines connecting places touched by the hollow. The curse is leaping from node to node. Elias traced a trembling finger over the map, stopping at a faded mark near the village of Arlene where Lila had been sent before her disappearance. Then the curse has already spread beyond Dallin, Elias said. We have to act. That night, the villagers gathered once more, their faces pale with fear and resolve. Orion led the meeting, standing tall despite his years. We must find the source of this new spread, he said, and sever it before it consumes us all. Elias volunteered to journey to Arlene, to seek the origins of the curse's new movement. Theron insisted on accompanying him. Before they left, the seeress appeared again, her voice a haunting melody. "Beware the child of shadows," she whispered. "A vessel born of curse and blood. The key and the weapon." Elias's heart clenched. Was this a warning? Or a prophecy? The journey to Arlene was fraught with signs of decay and despair. Fields lay fallow, streams ran black, and the air tasted of sorrow. They arrived at a small, nearly abandoned hamlet. Children no longer played, and adults whispered of nightmares that clawed at their minds. Theron consulted the web of shadows, pinpointing a decrepit manor on the hill, the last known home of the Holloway family, once revered guardians who vanished generations ago. Inside the manor, Elias found remnants of ritual, broken sigils, scorched parchment, and a child's cradle, dust-covered but intact. Suddenly, a chilling laughter echoed. From the shadows emerged a young girl no more than 10, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "I am Myra," she said, voice echoing beyond her years. "Born from the hollow, child of blood and shadow." Elias felt a shiver. Myra was the child of shadows the seeress had warned about. Myra smiled, revealing teeth sharper than any mortal's. "You came for me," she whispered. "And I will show you the truth of the hollow." What followed was a series of visions that tore at Elias's soul. He saw the origin of the curse, a forbidden ritual, a pact with an ancient being beneath the earth, and the betrayal of guardians who sought power over balance. He witnessed Myra's birth, an unholy fusion of human and hollow essence, designed to unlock the gate and unleash the curse fully. Elias realized the price of victory was far greater than he had imagined. Back in Dallin, the village began to change. More children fell ill, eyes vacant, whispers of shadows trailing them. The elders prepared for a war unlike any before, a war for the very souls of their people. Elias and Theron returned, bearing Myra's warning. "We must face her," Elias declared, "or lose everything." The night hung heavy over Dallin village, the moon veiled behind a shroud of dark clouds, as if the heavens themselves mourned what was to come. Elias, Theron, and Myra stood face to face in the ruins of the old Holloway Manor, the epicenter of the Hollow's growing power. Myra's eyes gleamed like twin stars swallowed by darkness. "You can't stop what's already begun. The gate is not a prison anymore, it's a door. And soon, the hollow will flood your world." Elias clenched his fists, the forgotten scroll glowing softly in his grip. "I won't let that happen." Theron stepped forward, voice calm but urgent. "There is still a way, but it requires a sacrifice no one wants to make." Myra laughed, a sound both innocent and cruel. "Sacrifice? Like the one who walked the veiled path before you? The marked one?" Elias's gaze flickered. The memory of his descent, the pain, the loss. "You don't understand," he said, voice low. "I faced the hollow's heart and survived. But you, what are you really?" Myra's smile twisted. "I am its vessel. the child born from its curse and your bloodlines taint. I carry the hollow's will and the hope for its rebirth. Suddenly, the manor shook. Shadows writhed and stretched, the walls alive with whispers and screams. From the darkness emerged the echoes' faces of lost children, their eyes empty but pleading. Elias looked around, the battle had already begun. The fight was brutal. Myra moved with a grace unnatural for one so young, her hands weaving dark sigils that tore at the fabric of reality. Elias countered with chants from the forgotten scroll, the blue flame burning brighter, cutting through the shadow tendrils. Theron wielded ancient relics, daggers forged in moonlight, amulets humming with protective wards, buying Elias moments to strike. Yet, Myra was relentless, her power fueled by the hollow and the pain of centuries. At one point, Myra trapped Elias in a vision, a mirror of his deepest fears: his wife's betrayal, Lila lost forever, the village consumed by darkness. But Elias held on, shouting to break free, clutching the memory of his daughter's laughter. He burst from the illusion, slashing his dagger through the veil of shadows. As the battle raged, a revelation shattered the chaos. Theron shouted, "Elias! The scroll, there's a hidden rite." He pointed to a passage in the ancient script, revealing a ritual to bind Myra's spirit and sever the hollow's link forever, but at a cost. The marked must become the new guardian, forever tied to the hollow, sacrificing their own freedom to imprison the curse. Elias faced a terrible choice. He looked at Myra, the innocent child, and the monstrous vessel intertwined. He saw the hope for redemption and the threat of destruction. The final moments came like a storm. Elias chanted the binding rite, his voice steady despite the weight of destiny. Myra screamed, not with anger, but sorrow. "Don't do this. I'm not a monster." But the ritual's power enveloped her, chains of light binding her form, the hollow's darkness retreating. As the light consumed her, Myra's eyes softened, a single tear tracing down her cheek. "Remember me," she whispered. Elias collapsed, drained but victorious. Theron knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "The curse is sealed. For now." Back in the village, dawn broke, pale but promising. Lila played nearby, laughter pure and unburdened. But Elias knew the price. He was now the guardian bound to the hollow, the eternal sentinel between worlds. His sacrifice had saved Dallin, but his freedom was lost. As the sun rose, Elias looked toward the whispering pond, now calm and clear. A silent promise passed between him and the waters. He would watch. He would wait. And when the hollow stirred again, as it inevitably would, he would be ready. After his fierce battle with Myra, Elias is no longer an ordinary man. The price of being the gatekeeper, the guardian of the boundary between the living world and the hollow world, is deeply ingrained in his soul and body. But the responsibility is heavier than he thought. Every night, Elias hears echoes from underground. Souls still bound in the darkness call out, begging for release, but also carrying sounds of resentment and despair. Elias understands that there are curses that cannot be lifted once and for all. They are the circle of life and death, of oblivion and memory. Yet he remains steadfast. Day after day, Elias acts as a mediator between the two worlds, helping the lingering souls, keeping his promise to protect the village from the rise of the Hollow. He sought out Orion, who had accompanied him, to teach him the secret arts of prevention, forming a team of young mages who knew the legacy and the curse. Together, they built a system of spells around the village, establishing periodic rituals to strengthen the bond between the world and the Hollow. During a ceremony under the pure moonlight, Elias called Lila close. "You won't miss me," he said, his eyes sad. Lila smiled innocently, "But I'll always be with you, right?" He nodded. At that moment, no matter how the world changed, love and sacrifice were still the guiding light. Tuta. The Whispering Pond, Curse of the Hollow Gate, a dark fantasy horror tale. Amota. In the quiet village of Dallin, an ancient curse stirs beneath the waters of the Whispering Pond. Elias Gale, a man marked by blood and fate, must descend into the veiled path, a realm of forgotten souls and ancient horrors, to confront the Hollow's eternal darkness. Joined by the enigmatic Theron and haunted by the tragic vessel Myra, Elias faces impossible choices, sacrifices, and battles that blur the lines between reality and nightmare. This dark fantasy horror unfolds a chilling tale of love, loss, and the price of guarding the fragile boundary between worlds. Will Elias save his daughter and his village, or become the prison himself? Dive into a story of shadows, sacrifice, and hope that lingers beyond the veil.